man was shot by the police officer, a lot of attention was drawn to social media, and people started communicating what happened on social media. So that generated a lot of nationwide buzz. It got international attention as well. But most of the cases involving police altercations with African Americans do not get reported.
Now, finally, Chris, what is the way forward that could ultimately bring these tensions to a halt?
A lot of people in Ferguson, Missouri and the greater St. Louis, Missouri area say that they think the only way to ease racial tensions in the community is for a grand jury to indict or either charge the police officer involved in killing Michael Brown.
Well, thank you very much. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's Chris Simpkins, who is live in Missouri. Well, that's it on The World Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Are. May not be perfect in handling crisis situations, but governments believe they are doing all they can to curb the spread. However, the virus has slightly changed the way some countries are reacting to its spread.
That remains the challenge: how best to contain the Ebola virus. But the common feature in the West African countries affected is the establishment of isolation centers where the infected patients can get the help they need. But now that the health workers are just at risk as the patients themselves, extra care is required at the centers. In Lagos, Nigeria, which has the highest number of persons under surveillance, the government's call for volunteers has received little response. Lagos State may have had the quickest response to the presence of Ebola, but Nigeria's West African neighbors, not so much. Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf said last week the country's resources are being geared towards combating its spread, but it feels like a drop in the ocean. During an interview with CNN, she called on the international community to come to Liberia's aid, as this is already a global problem. Her words may have been echoed by Sierra Leone's President Ernest Bai Koroma, who on Friday called on the World Health Organization to do more to fight the disease. More than 1,000 people have been killed by the virus, and over 300 of them have been from Sierra Leone.
And it's an extraordinary situation, and they've all agreed that we require extraordinary response. So that is why we wanted a quick response. And it's only after our meeting in Conakry that WHO went out to urge the other partners.
The worst affected countries are recovering from a decade of civil wars, and their health systems seem overwhelmed. Liberia is said to have one doctor for every 70,000 people, Sierra Leone one for every 45,000, compared to one for every 360 people in Britain and one for every 410 in the United States. Sadly, medical charity Doctors Without Borders does not have good news on its containment of the virus.
General fear all over.
International President Joan Liu said at a press briefing on Friday that it will take about 6 months to bring the epidemic under control in West Africa, but that the key is to stabilize Liberia, which will in turn stabilize the whole region. It, however, comes with great responsibility.
We need as well people with, I would say, hands-on operational mindset for disaster management. And because expert most of the time, they're not the most operational people. They might give you good advice, but when it comes the times to bring the reality check from the field into an action and a strategy, there needs to be a linking person in between.
For the rest of the world, prevention is key. And that includes sounding an alert on travel to nationals planning trips to Ebola-hit countries, like this one on the website of the Australian government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. For many countries outside of Africa, the goal is not just to prevent the virus from coming in, it's also about preparations for if it does. The UK government 2 weeks ago set up the only high-secure infectious diseases unit at London's Royal Free Hospital, with only 7 doctors specially trained in infectious diseases allowed to enter the tightly sealed ward guarded with automatic locks. Although no cases of Ebola have been found in Britain, Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said London was considering extra precautions, but is confident it could contain the disease if necessary. Earlier in July, public health officials issued guidance to hospitals and doctors asking them to look out for possible cases in travelers returning from the affected countries. Following an announcement by the WHO on August the 8th declaring the Ebola epidemic an international health emergency, Peru's National Health Institute unveiled a high-security Ebola testing laboratory in Lima and declared a countrywide alert as part of the preventive measures issued in containing the possible spread of the virus. Peru is prepared to face the potential admission of patients with the Ebola virus in the sense that it can detect this epidemiologically in the early stages at entry points in the country, which may be able to control its spread to other people because the virus is highly contagious via fluids and blood, and at the laboratory level, we are prepared to be able to diagnose on a molecular level using the format recommended by the WHO. It's unlikely that Germany would face an outbreak similar to that of West Africa, but a medical team at the University Hospital Charité has been drilling staff on procedures for dealing with a suspected case in the country.
A suspected case is now possible, not very likely, but possible, and that it's going to be an outbreak like in Western Africa, I don't see that because we have the means, we have some structures. If it would start, we could contain this outbreak pretty fast.
India's health services say they are on the alert as the virus could be imported into the country if large populations of Indians working in the 4 affected West African countries return. Every point, such as borders and airports, are also prepared to detect any possible case of an infected person, especially those from West Africa. The government has advised against all non-essential travel to the 4 countries, adding that authorities will screen travelers who originate from or transit through affected nations and track them after their arrival in India. Nigeria has nearly 40,000 Indian citizens. And for others, such as Japan, evacuation is a major solution. However, countries such as China are sending experts and medical workers to the Guinean capital, Conakry, to help it combat the latest round of the epidemic. The experts will continue to work with local medical teams to share their expertise in controlling and preventing disease. They will also provide training for local medical workers on personal protection, disinfection, and biological safety. A German firm is helping to develop a drug for Ebola, while Uganda is sending a team consisting of 20 medical practitioners to Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, a move considered significant to the world by the World Health Organization. Experts say given that the country has dealt with several epidemic cases in the past, the country is skilled at containing viruses. It was worst hit by the Ebola outbreak in 2007, when the disease killed 37 people.
We need 2 hours to get started right here. We need all the nurses, all the doctors to come in. We need all the technicians.
Now we go back to our top story. I did tell you that the situation in the town of Ferguson is so intense that the U.S. state of Missouri has resorted to calling on the National Guard to prevent further protests from escalating as regards the shooting of a black unarmed teenager by the police. Now, for more on this, I'm being joined now by the Voice of America's Chris Simpkins, who is live in Missouri. Hello, Chris. Thank you for joining us. Now, the initial response by the police to the shooting of Michael Brown seemed somewhat casual while the community was demanding answers. The police officer in question has been identified and has also been placed on paid administrative leave. My question to you is, what does it say about the justice system, and does it not only make this bad situation worse?
Well, what it says about the justice system is that it often does not move at blazing speeds. in most cases involving police-involved shootings in most other cities, there are reports released between the first 24 to 48 hours giving details of the case, identifying the officer involved, and a brief description of what happened. In this case, it's been 6 days since the incident, and we're just learning just last week the name of the officer involved in the shooting that killed 18-year-old Michael Brown. What happens next is that there's going to be a thorough investigation, several autopsies conducted on the body, interviewing as many witnesses as they possibly can to the crime to try to piece together exactly what happened. So that's going to take some time, along with a group of jurors will be meeting called a grand jury, and they will be looking over the evidence and determining whether or not to indict or charge the officer involved in shooting and killing Michael Brown.
Now, would it be fair to say that Michael Brown's shooting was the last straw in racial tensions between police around the United States and the African American community?
Well, a lot of police-involved shootings, especially dealing with African Americans, they happen all over the United States. They're not isolated to just one part of the country. You often see it happening in a lot of bigger cities. In this case, it was a suburb outside of a larger city. But for the most part, they don't get the kind of attention that the shooting of Michael Brown got. Immediately after the young man was shot by the police officer, a lot of attention was drawn to social media, and people started communicating what happened on social media. So that generated a lot of nationwide buzz. It got international attention as well. But most of the cases involving police altercations with African Americans do not get reported.
Now, finally, Chris, what is the way forward that could ultimately bring these tensions to a halt?
A lot of people in Ferguson, Missouri and the greater St. Louis, Missouri area say that they think the only way to ease racial tensions in the community is for a grand jury to indict or either charge the police officer involved in killing Michael Brown.
Well, thank you very much. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's Chris Simpkins, who is live in Missouri. Well, that's it on The World Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Are.